Welcome back to Mid Morning Talk with me, your host Maria Mia, and I have I'm reading out something that has sent to me, and this says they have not slept or eaten anything since Thursday. They've been on the road for days, and all they want is to rest. Cars leaving Ukraine spend between 60 and 80 hours in queues at borders. You can imagine what that does. Some borders only allow one bus to leave every 24 hours. Others, it's one bus every hour for the entire time while waiting to cross the border. The people can't do anything. They sit and wait in the buses. The, these are incredible people who have opened their hearts and homes, and they said they will gladly assist those who need a safe place to stay. So we've all linked up. And now I'm joined by one of the volunteers that are assisting and to help repatriate South Africans who are working or studying in the Ukraine is founder and lead volunteer of Community Circle Home South Africa, and that is Kim Kerr, and she's helping, well, globally, a group of volunteers to assist specifically South Africans to be repatriated safely back home to South Africa, long distance from Ukraine to South Africa. So let's welcome Kim to the program. Good morning, Kim, and thank you for joining us here on Salam Media.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure. So, Kim, I know for a number of years you have a Facebook page, and you selflessly give of your time, your resources, and expertise in terms of repatriating South Africans from various areas, conflict zones, or when situations become dangerous. Tell me, how did you get involved with assisting to repatriate South Africans in Ukraine?
So, just after lockdown started, I was approached by a group of volunteers who had come together to help people to repatriate back to South Africa when South Africa's borders, and at that stage, most of the world's borders were actually closed. I carried on doing that with them until South Africa's borders opened on the 1st of October, at which point we had managed to get home 22,000 South Africans. But the issues continued. Most people know that traveling during COVID is not for the faint-hearted. It can be very confusing, it can be extremely frustrating, and it can be quite disheartening with all the myriad of changing regulations. So I founded at that point Community Circle Home SA to help people travel in and out of South Africa through these ongoing changes of regulations. And we're now at a base of about 17,500 individuals abroad and in South Africa. And we really aim to just help each other through travel, helping the travel community and just helping civilians all over the world to deal with all the confusion. But when Russia invaded Ukraine, I got a call from a lady who has been working in a similar situation with helping people in the Netherlands, a lady Leanne Blau. And she felt that I could help with all the contacts that I've built over the last 2 or so years. And we all just jumped in. We've come together as a committee. We call our committee South Africans Ukraine Crisis. We have a Facebook page dedicated to it. And it's really somewhere where people who know of South Africans in Ukraine can find us, can communicate with us, and can give us the details of those South Africans, which we then in turn share with the ambassador. We have WhatsApp groups for anybody who's an evacuee, and most times one person on that group who will then be relaying it back to the rest of their family who are also in Ukraine. And very often those family members and sometimes other people traveling with them are not South African. So we take care of the group that are traveling together where one of them or more is South African. We have now started also working on assisting other people in Southern Africa, and now higher up in Africa, just to try and alleviate the stress that all of these guys are going through, and to try to create some kind of a committee that can help them through with information. Once we've got you onto, sorry?
No, go ahead and then I'll ask the question.
So once we've got you onto the group where we now know where you're going to move to, we then move you onto an additional WhatsApp group, which would be the group appropriate to the border where you're going to be crossing over out of Ukraine. And unfortunately, the last few days have been eerily quiet on those groups. Very few people able to move. And for the most part, the people on the group that are left are unable to move. It's not safe to do so.
So how many, more or less in average, how many South Africans are there that are still stuck in Ukraine or still at the border who have not yet crossed the border?
It's a very difficult number to give you. When I asked the ambassador, the South African ambassador of Ukraine, Andrei Groenewald, for a number on the first day that I started doing this, he said that they had 200 people registered as South Africans in the Ukraine. Of course, not everybody registers themselves. And it still happens that every day or two, we find another person or another family who are South African who have reached out to us via the Facebook page, who are unknown by us and unknown by the ambassador. We've been watching 127 individuals to date. Again, some of those are not South African. So you may have a South African mom and dad and child, and then another child who's not South African, or you might have a spouse that's South African and their partner is not, and their children are not registered as South African. So, but we're looking at 127 individuals, and of those 127, about 25 are South African citizens with their families. So if we add those families, so the 25 South African citizens with their families, that takes us to 41 individuals that are still in Ukraine, and 25 of those are unsafe to move. So that's 21 South Africans plus a few additional family members.
And how is the relationship been so far in terms of communication and working with DIRCO as well as the ambassador of the embassy in Ukraine? Do you have a good working relationship, or has bureaucracy sometimes been challenging in terms of the work you're doing, or maybe speeding up the process?
Well, I think that anybody dealing with any stressful situation is going to find things challenging. I'm always very cautious that if an ambassador of any country is not phoning me back or not taking my call, to assume that he doesn't want to help me. Most often, you find that they were just busy on something else and they need to focus their attention there and give that individual that they're helping their required headspace. Andrei Groenewald has been working with us. He's on our committee groups. He speaks to our South Africans. He speaks to the students. And we feed him information in turn. As for the Ukrainian ambassador in South Africa, she's been absolutely outstanding and is always available to speak to us numerous times per day.
Oh, so that has been wonderful. And in terms of the cost, who then bears the cost of the repatriation, the transport cost, probably from a town in Ukraine to get students to various borders, and that does this come from donor funds from the MPO, or is it absorbed by government and the embassy in terms of cost and facilitating the whole operation?
So to date, the costs of getting your transport from wherever your location is in Ukraine to the borders has been on the individual. We have had a couple of people who've reached out and offered to assist and help them with those costs, but the costs are extremely high. And I don't think people realize what the situation is there money-wise. You cannot access the banks. So any money you've got in a credit card or a debit card is of no use to you while you're there unless you're able to book something online. We've had one or two other successful people who managed to find an Uber somehow, very expensive Uber, but an Uber nonetheless. Most people are required to, if they want to take a taxi, pay cash. So that is anything from $300 per person, this is US dollars, $350 per person. So if you've got a family of 4, you're looking at 20,000 Rand to travel the 90 or 100 kilometers to the border. Very often those taxis won't wait the 100 or so hours at the border with you. So then you go on foot to the front of the border, which can take you 17 hours, 20 hours, depending on how fast you're moving. The buses are slightly cheaper and actually a better route to take because they will take you to the front of the border. The only problem there is you are in for about 100 hours to get to the front. And the buses are they charge one price to Ukrainians, and then they charge 3 times that price to somebody who's a non-Ukrainian. So you're looking at about 1,500 Rand per person extra over and above what a Ukrainian citizen would pay for a bus. So we're looking at a lot of money here and a lot of time. The trains are free. Difficulty with the trains is you've got thousands of people standing at a train station. It's extremely dangerous. We've had many of our citizens trampled in stampedes, people picked up and thrown off the trains before they move. Thankfully, nobody that we have on our radar has been has lost their lives to this, but we have had some students quite badly injured, and this is before they then have to walk their 17 hours to the front of the queue.
And it comes to the makeup of most of the South Africans who are in Ukraine are students studying medicine. Am I correct in this assumption?
Well, there is a very good med school in Ukraine, and a lot of South African students have found it easier to get into med school there than they have in South Africa because of various issues that we have with our schools here. But I don't want to say that they're all students. We've got 2 students that I'm aware of still there. Unfortunately, both in Sumy, which is exceptionally dangerous at the moment. That's right near the border of Russia. And that is where our focus is at the moment, trying to find safe passage for them. And I'm aware of another doctor who is a pediatric specialist, also unable to move at this stage, and he is studying further, but he is a qualified doctor. But there are other students as well, studying other things, and then we've got families. One lady works with an orphanage, so she's there with her 4 members of her family and 50 orphans that are only just under half of those are able to leave because of paperwork issues that you would have with orphans. So she's looking after them at the moment. So there's so many different people. A lot of people are living there because they've married a Ukrainian and they're there with their new Ukrainian family.
And I'm sure the family back in South Africa has also been now in constant communication with you, because I can only imagine what it must be like on this side here, concern about your loved one, waiting for news here, stressing, have they reached a place of safety? So is there maybe a separate support system for family members here waiting for loved ones and waiting for information from loved ones that are still in Ukraine and waiting at borders or wherever they may be?
I'm sure you can appreciate the excruciating agony of being so far away from your loved one and you're not able to do anything. So we do have parents, children, brothers, sisters who reach out to us for help. Very often they're the ones who find us on behalf of their family, and then we keep in contact with them to keep them updated with their loved one. Very often also, if you're in a bunker, you have very little to no signal. So we've got guys who are 2 floors down in a basement, and they come up once a day, let's say, to shower and change, or once every day and a half, and that's when they communicate with us. So in the meantime, we'll then let their family know, okay, we've spoken, this is the story. And for example, 2 days ago, we had somebody reach out to the page to say she cannot find her son. She's aware that her son is in Ukraine and she hasn't been able to contact him. And she was going through extreme worry. We looked for him, and we actually found him, and he'd moved on to Europe and was safe. So often you get the opportunity to give some good news to a family member. And then we have other family who say, well, my family's stuck between borders, because there's a no man's land space between Ukraine and the adjacent country. And they sometimes get stuck between there, and then they'll reach out to us because signal's sometimes poor there. And then we'll be able to send an ambassador of sorts or somebody, an interpreter, to help them through that. But we do stay in contact with them. We also have an incredible group of registered psychologists and social workers on a specific WhatsApp group that is open to us. And if we feel that a family member is really not coping, or an evacuee, somebody who has successfully evacuated or is unable to move, if they need the help, we pair them up with somebody qualified to help them through that as well.
And is the South African embassy in Ukraine still functioning? Is it safe there in terms of that you have contact with the ambassador and the Groeneval, as you said? Are they safe there in the embassy, and are they still able to function there, or are there talks about closing the embassy down because maybe it's unsafe at the moment?
My understanding is Ambassador Groeneveld kept the South African flag flying outside the embassy and remained there in a bunker with his family for as long as it was safe to do so. At the point where it became unsafe, he then managed to evacuate Ukraine, but is watching minute by minute, helping people through this from where he is now. I'm not sure of his location at the moment. The Ukrainian ambassador that we speak to is in South Africa. She's based in Pretoria.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we conclude this interview?
So we need to get these people home. Most of them are in Hungary. We have some in Poland, and really all the countries around Ukraine, apart from Russia. And we need to get them home. So we have teamed up with an amazing organization called We Are South Africans. And they are taking donations, and we will be funding flights to get them back to South Africa safely.
And where do they have a Facebook page? Is there a website, We Are South Africans?
There is a website, We Are South Africans, and they're on Facebook as well. And also they can look us up. If they look us up on Facebook, either through my Community Circle Home SA page, or they can find us on South Africans Ukraine Crisis, and we've put the details up there on how they donate.
Kim, I want to thank you for your time. I know you extremely busy in terms of facilitating the repatriation, and we wish you well, and we wish you success in your repatriation efforts, as well as your community of volunteers as well. And we'd like to salute you and acknowledge you for the amazing, sterling work that you do in terms of getting our South African citizens, well, not only Ukraine, but all over, safely back home under difficult and costly circumstances, and also giving hope to families that they will be united and repatriated with their loved ones in the shortest possible time. So from all of us here at Salam Media, this is your platform, and if there's any other news that comes to light you'd like to share, please do contact us on Salam Media, your online humanitarian platform.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we're going to be putting the focus and spotlight on education, and we are going to be focusing on the province of KZN. All this after the break.